Thank you so much for joining us for this final session of the Industry Plus Intelligence Day, leading into the Outdoor Retailer Winter Online Show. I am so excited to have you with us. Tim, I am Maggie Bittner, Head of Education for SIA, and we are very happy and fortunate to have one of our partners with us here, Tim Nero of Linkum. And he is going to talk to you a little bit about store inventory and some of the new technologies, or not necessarily new, but some of the technologies that are out there to help you manage it. So Tim, I'm going to turn the reins over to you.
Well, thank you, Maggie, and welcome everybody. I appreciate everyone here on the East Coast where I am located, hanging out till 5 o'clock. I'm going to make this about 30 minutes, so I won't take too much of your day up, but I think you're going to find some of this information pretty compelling. And I'm really, the point of this conversation is to give you a perspective, a technology perspective on where this market is going as it relates to digital marketing software, with brands and retailers all using that technology to kind of further our cause, right? And we'll get into a lot of different things as it relates to where the pandemic drove us, where we're going, new technologies that are coming out. So I think you'll find a lot of this rather interesting. Let me get my screen going there. Okay, so this is a quick agenda. I won't go over all the items, but it's really going to be inventory centric, as the title implies, because I think that's going to be sort of a real driver as we're moving forward, as we think about our marketing strategies, both at the retail level and the brand level. And I'll talk a lot about why that's true. Okay. I have to talk about the pandemic at some point in here because it had a profound influence, right, on all of us in this last year, and will continue to have some lasting effects for us all as it relates to our business, not to mention our personal lives, of course. But these are the kinds of things that we saw really being pushed forward dramatically in the last year, and quite frankly, not in a bad way, because these are things that were trends already, but were moving us further forward, like, you know, a digital first communication initiative where we're making sure that everything is mobile and website ready for communicating outwards to those folks that are maybe sitting at home and doing online shopping and things. You know, the buy online, pick up in store, huge, right? Last year, I'll talk about some statistics that have really went through the roof last year with that, and that's not going to go away, as well as e-commerce platforms. Anyone who's out there providing e-commerce platforms saw a tremendous growth last year, and that was because of those folks that hadn't had an e-commerce platform because they were the local store and weren't thinking necessarily being able to extend out and reach out to people and allow them to buy online. So a lot of things really got driven through in a good way. So we'll look at that as a positive coming out of the pandemic, right? Okay, so now let's make a case for the inventory centric marketing strategy by numbers. Okay, so I'm going to quote my good friend Mike Massey from locally. He's a business partner of ours, and he often says this when talking to retailers who are reluctant to share their retail inventory online, meaning you're not going to go to a movie theater and not know what's playing, right? It's the same thing as going to a store and really not knowing what's in stock. I know I do it quite often because I don't want to waste the trip. And certainly during the pandemic, that again went through the roof because people wanted to make sure they weren't wasting a trip and they want to kind of risk, getting sick, right? So I think the thing that we need to talk about throughout this conversation that we're going to have here for the next 25 or so minutes is around this Netflix-like experience, I call it, where we're actually making sure that consumers can look at products side by side, price comparisons, making sure that the indicators are on there, that it's on, that you have it in stock, you can do curbside pickup. All of these things are critical and they're not going away. They were driven, as I mentioned a moment ago, by the pandemic, and they're going to continue to linger, which is a good thing, as I said. So this is an interesting statistics, right? So this is from February of 2019. That's 2 years ago. And at that point, 46% of people confirmed inventory online. And you'll see, if you look during April of last year, that went up 70%. That's another 32%, or a total of 78% of people in that time frame were checking first, and for obvious reasons. So even if we knock that down a few points, right, there's still going to be a tremendous amount of linger behavior, I'll call it, of people making sure that things are in stock. So the driver behind that is sharing inventory, right? This one is always interesting to look at, is that people are doing this more and more and more. Searches for the available near me kind of a search, which Google now obviously you kind of burnt into their vernacular, if you will, as well as ours. So if you're looking for a store that sells particular size boots or some kind of ski equipment, right? It's in there. So that, again, these are numbers that have driven up via the pandemic, but they're going to linger, and we have to be ready for that. So these also are interesting. We got these from a website that another software provider, where you're showing apparel shoppers, which are even more specific, right? That if they are not finding that item, they're going to leave the store. And these are things we, again, want to point out that says we need to be able to share with people what we have in stock in inventory. The curbside pickup thing. I know my wife goes out to Target and will do this often, and I don't think that's going to go away, where she'll pull into the parking spot, they're loading the car in the back and putting the items. That was convenience. That really was born from convenience, but obviously was driven by the pandemic. That convenience factor is going to continue there. And so we have to make sure that they not only know that we have this item in stock, but that we can pick it up on curbside. So having these elements on our pages are important. Let's talk a little bit about BOPIS, right? Buy online, pick up in store. As I mentioned a moment ago, this isn't a new concept, right? This has been coming on for years, but it went through the roof, as I see there, 259% year-over-year growth during the pandemic. So again, even if that were to go back down, it's not going to go down by a factor of 10. It's going to go down pretty low, pretty gradually. So, but the key to this is back to inventory, right? I've got to make sure that people know I have it in store, or else they're not going to buy it online and pick it up on store. So these features, having these not only on our website or our digital marketing, more importantly, tags are critical to making sure we get people in the store. And even more important, that last bullet point is in the future, as we tell people, I'll even have it in store in 2 days, being able to send notifications out and tell people, I've got it, it's ready, come pick it up, is another convenience factor, right? So we need to be thinking about these technologies and or these notification capabilities to be able to let customers know about the convenience we have around what we have in stock. Excuse me. Okay, buyer intent. These are not really 2021 per se unique buyer intents, but they're carried over and again, just accelerated, if you will, through the pandemic, right? So people want the quickest way possible, the convenience that I've been talking about, and the lowest price. So that Netflix-like ability to see what I have in stock and be able to go and buy it right now if it's available. So this is my favorite area because I've been a technologist for my entire life. I've been doing this a long time. So I think this is where the rubber meets the road for this industry. So if we talk about the technology case, I often use this example analogy, albeit a bit exaggerated, right? We don't have power plants in the back of each of our homes to power electricity. We buy it from a single source. And so that's the whole concept in the technology world around cloud platforms, is that ability to put technology out into a shared environment dramatically lowers the cost of how we access those things, but we're also getting on the other side a tremendous more capabilities. So if you think about an individual named Mark Benoff, who in 1999 started a small company, he said, I think we should be able to put sales information for each customer into the cloud and put all your sales order information, everything in there. And of course, people were like, you're crazy. I'm not going to store my information right next to someone else's. And of course, that he won on that bet. That turned out to be Salesforce, which is worth billions and billions of dollars. And he really kicked off this revolution around cloud technology. I just see in the outdoor retail industry that there's a lag there. I mean, there's capabilities around digital marketing that are really siloed still. And so I'm a huge proponent, and we are here at Linkem, around trying to put all of those things together so it's much, much more convenient to connect the dots. So we talk about brands now that have their own media libraries, right? I mean, that is technology that there's lots of companies providing that, but as a silo. And so think about it from a retailer's perspective. I now have to access 50 different media libraries, when in fact I have one unique goal, and that is to create a digital marketing piece, right? Why shouldn't I be able to just grab that off a singular platform and be able to do that much easier, dramatically lowering the cost of how we do that. So that's what cloud technology is really intended to do, is to drive the cost down, allow these technologies to kneel down to a much larger customer base, and provide the same kinds of capabilities around those kinds of things. So that is one of the things I'm going to kind of a central theme I'm going to kind of talk about through here. And here's a great example. So today, a lot of brands we work with, they're providing their product catalog, digital product catalog, out to many sources. And so once that happens, you don't know what all those individual sources were doing with that, whether they're altering the content in some way, the descriptions, and they're moving away from the brand compliancy of what the brand was really trying to say around that product. Okay, so the concept here is, and this is a small example of that cloud capability I talked about, is having sort of product catalog providers. Locally is a great example of that, our partner, who aggregates this, but they don't just take it and put and store it. They're going through that and what we call homogenizing that data. They're taking it and making sure that it's going to be consistent, it's going to be useful for the masses, right? So these things are important, and it's a good way and a good example of describing how aggregation for technology is a positive. The same thing on the right-hand side, we do this digital marketing feed provider, where a single source is now taking that data as well as inventory data and cleaning that and being able to populate all of these social and search channels that we'll talk about in a minute. These kinds of technologies are the things that I'm really a huge advocate for in the outdoor retail space, around us trying to move in that direction. And that's going to take, people to say, okay, I got to let some of my old world thinking down and allow some of these things to be shared. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Here's a great example. As I point out, algorithms are smart until they're not, right? Here's an example of data that slipped through or went through to Facebook, and they rejected this particular ad. Now look at that. It says a perception drift 9.5. It's a canoe. And they perceived it as being an ad trying to sell tickets. These are the kinds of things that, although algorithms are incredibly smart and helpful, they're not always perfect, right? So someone needs to clean those things up. That's the kind of jobs and things like that that should be moved up to the cloud and taken care of by services and such, not each individual user trying to solve this problem over and over and over again. Okay, let's talk about inventory and product listings. And so when we talk about product listings, we're talking about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Google, right? So they've got, as of July last year, 87% of the search market. And we can't ignore that. That's how it is. We all use it. We all search for products. We all do the near me things. So we've got to be thinking about, how do we use our inventory and how do we use the tools they provide to us to be able to get the notifications out to our local customers, and it could be long distance customers for e-commerce purposes, what products we have in store. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We're trying to sell product, right? But in 2020, Google came up with a realization they had to make a big push in this area, being able to provide tools for local vendors to be able to get their products online and to be able to notify local consumers that they're there. So they offered a lot of capabilities in 2020. They opened up a program, which we're a certified partner with them on, that allows these things to go out there and be advertised more easily. And the target was, of course, to go against the big boys, right? The Amazons of the world, eBay, and those marketplace affiliates, and be able to make sure that your products are online. And they're continuing to evolve this program, as we'll talk about. So the simple thing is, these are free, meaning you can upload your inventory and get your data out there without paying a charge. There's no ad fee. Okay, that's the thing that people do get confused. There's no ad fee. So I'm not going to make this a commercial about Google. I'm just saying you've got to take a recognition that Google is the place to put your inventory as a bottom line. But you can see that there are the ads. There are it's telling you that I have curbside pickup. There are going to be more and more feature like the one I described before, where you can tell the product will be available in 2 days, coming out as this capability moves forward. But the free listing is a tremendous advantage that they've added to the platform. And with that, with just uploading your inventory, there are lots of different things that you get from that, meaning that I can do the near me search stores or the in-stock search stores. In this example, Google says, hey, you're 5 miles from that particular consumer looking for a product. I'm going to bump you up. In this case, In Town Ace Hardware moved up to the second position, so it gets noticed, right? And that's the whole concept of their local inventory capabilities. Same thing with Google My Business. Every store should have a Google My Business store on Google to be able to not only tell people where their store is, but the products that they have to sell. But you can't ignore the ad side of it, which is you can have a local inventory ads as well, pay for those and have those rise to the top. If you see here, I have the all tab showing and my products are merged right in there and I can show those to anybody I want to move product. These all require inventory, right? I gotta have the inventory. And what Google makes incredibly easy is to upload the inventory through interfaces. What isn't easy is the setup and the waiting time and the making sure the data is clean and the errors that come back. That's where the costs start creeping in, even though some of this is free. And then the product listing ads are the ones that you really want to be using for e-commerce. And quite frankly, the use case here is pretty compelling. I mean, for every $3, for every $1.60, I'm going to make $3. That's a proven fact. And people need to think about that as an investment. People often look at digital marketing as insurance. Like, it's hard to tell if I'm making any money. It's proven. The fact is, it's proven that you will make money over time using that technology. So I just had one more slide there to kind of show that pick up today thing is incredibly important when you're running local ads, right? So I can see that it's in stock. I've now moved up in line of where my store shows up because of my proximity to user, my score on my Google My Business. So all of these things are incredibly important for retailers to show up. Let's talk about social advertising in a second. And I'm going to bring all this back home in a minute. I want to give you all this sort of groundwork. Okay. So social advertising is very interesting and where it's evolving. We all know that Facebook and Instagram has sort of been the 800-pound gorilla on the social side, and people put tons of money in the advertising there. And of course, last summer they had some issues where people dropped off. But the fact of the matter is there's still millions upon millions of eyeballs on Facebook. And so we can't ignore that. I still think it makes sense to put money in those areas, specifically Instagram as well. There's just too big of an audience to ignore it, right? Now, some people have other reasons for not using it. That's fine too. But for advertising, digital marketing purposes, it's something we all should be looking at and making sure we're looking at. But let's just look at the numbers here, right? 51% of 13 to 17-year-olds use Facebook. Well, we all know they don't. If you have children or kids or young adults, they aren't using Facebook. They're actually using Instagram, which is owned by Facebook. But the point here really is we need to be looking out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years as that moves through the snake. That age group is going to be very, very focused on the Instagrams of the world and other technologies like I'll talk about here, like Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok or whatever else is the newest up and coming social network that's being used. The point of this slide is to really kind of influence brands that are on this presentation and to recognize that video content is incredibly important. Although we've been for years sharing with our retailers all of this digital imagery, that's great, but people and consumers want to consume video. And how do you deliver it? That's the challenge. And it gets back to my point of how do we use these platforms to our advantage to lower cost of distribution and to make sure that our retailers have the premium quality video content that you're creating. That's just frankly too hard today for a lot of retailers to download it, put it someplace, attach it. So it makes sense to be able to use these kind of technologies moving forward to be able to help aggregate and lower cost of digital marketing. Okay. I wanted to put this on here to kind of open people's eyes, like where are we headed? So back in the, the old days, I'll call it, people used print, right? Newspaper ads, or they used radio ads. And if you were going to put things on TV, you typically didn't have the money as a small shop to do that. These new cloud platforms, remember, lowering cost, right? Cloud platforms coming out that are providing not only television, but music are the replacements for that. So think of Hulu as a TV ad. They're going to be providing very soon this self-serve ad platform capability, which is, just think of it the same as Facebook. I can very quickly pop up an ad and pop it out there and have a local ad show up on someone's television around a service that I have, or even products that I'm selling. Back to our inventory theme. Same thing with Spotify. Spotify is the new radio ads in that regard, if you think of it that way. I'm a runner. I put my headphones on. I'm going to run a couple miles. Spotify is going to allow you to have very quick, simple 15-second, 30-second spot commercials that are localized, that are advertising that new running shoe you might have. So again, inventory being incredibly important. So I want everyone to be thinking about, where are we moving in terms of platforms of distribution? That's why I wanted to show you that whole Facebook ads stuff. That is powerful. You can't ignore it. It's going to be there for a few more years. Who knows, 10 more years, 2 more years. I can't predict that, but there are more and simpler ways for retailers to now get into the digital marketing world in various different avenues. And so it's going to take technology companies like mine and others that are able to deliver to these channels in a very simplistic way, and bringing together that brand content I spoke about a minute ago. Putting that all together, think about that. That's a difficult task for busy retailers, small and mid-size. They don't have the marketing staff to kind of do those things. So we look to technology to help us pull those things together. Okay, so I'm speaking to the brands now. Now, how do you support this activity? How do you support the retailers in this inventory-centric digital marketing strategy? I think most people on the brand side will laugh at this first element, where retailers stress the importance of these 3 must-haves from their brand partners. Of course, they're always going to say lower prices, right? They want to make more money, and I'm all for it. But the second one is the most important here on this slide, is that better content. It gets back to my point earlier where I talked about video content. So that's really kind of implied in that. They don't mean better as in that was a terrible picture. They mean more engaging. They want to have ways to have people come and engage with their social pages, let's say, for example, right? The ability to come in and see a professionally shot video ad that maybe has a wrapped around it of their store logo, right? That shows that kind of ad as if it were filmed by that store owner. That's what we need to be moving over to. That kind of better content is really what they're talking about. But they're also implying easier access. It's not just better, it's easy. And we have to look at technology to be able to help you pull things like that together. It is way too cost prohibitive for each individual retailer, homeowner in this example, right? Trying to build all of that up themselves. So they're going to be looking to companies like ourselves and others to be able to provide those capabilities. And I know the last one is always an eyebrow raiser, but the co-op investment brands, and I'll tell you, retailers that we work with, tons of them love the co-op, and they'll be driven if there are better ways to deliver this content using that co-op dollars. So there are 3 main things that we are looking at brands helping as it relates to this inventory-based advertising. Brands have typically helped out with platforms like ourselves, and others have been doing this for years, right? Being able to create once a branded social media ad or post, and then allow and sharing retailers that out, which retailers to be able to run that and locally, and then wrapping their store identity around that. Again, not new technology, but think about how we might be able to take that to the next level, where there are ads being auto-generated based upon in particular products, and then finding the retailers that have those in stock and auto running those. That's where we need to be taking this technology. And those are the things we talk about every single day, is how do we kind of really bring life to something that's been out there for years, and connecting the inventory. But if I don't have the Steelers inventory, I'm not going to be able to do that. And if they're not on an aggregated platform, I'm not going to be able to do that. That's where these things start coming together. And I hope I'm painting a fairly good picture of that. Brand catalogs I talked about earlier, right? Brands supplying catalog information that is going to be transmitted in a useful way, not just a spreadsheet that's thrown to someone, but somehow it can be transformed into feeding into these ads or using a database for a sort of artificial intelligence kind of capabilities around predictive type of digital marketing. And the last I mentioned earlier is this concept of sharing more digital video content with our retailers and making it easier to be able to embed that into their own digital marketing. These are the key things that technology is really trying to drive towards, and making it super simple and low cost. That's the key, low cost. I know from talking to all of our customers that they simply just want to put it in a closet and run. And that is what we think about every day as we build technology, is how do we make this extremely seamless, allowing the brand to have all the control around the content as it relates to imagery, but allowing some flexibility on the retailer side without a lot of work. That is like the holy grail. And so this is another example where inventory is driving Locally's dealer locator page, right? This is a great step for brands to now be, I know brands always battle with this direct to consumer versus, selling through the retailers, but these are steps that brands are taking now because they realize that as we are aware of inventory at these individual locations, it now opens up another opportunity for us to drive traffic for immediate fulfillment to these sites. And so that's another new technology that's also being offered more and more often, is this order fulfillment at the local level. So brands are realizing that if they can provide that kind of convenience, remember that word, then that it is in their best interest to push that lead off to the retailer, let them make the sale and do the fulfillment so the customer is satisfied. Ultimately, these are technologies that, again, every one of them at the heart of it needs to know about inventory. So it's something that these inventory sharing technologies that I've been talking about, we need to make sure we're evolving, constantly thinking about, and as well as participating in. So this one is a really fun one for technologists like myself, is the whole business intelligence side. There's so much information in just inventory to think about the trends, or think about how products are selling in one area or another. Think about being a retailer in Phoenix and seeing information from an anonymized retailer up in a different state, right? So that they can understand that, hey, this store is just like me from a profile perspective. Here are the things that they're doing, or here's some of the ads they run, or so ways of sharing inventory information and sales information without truly exposing who they are. I mean, I know the competitive nature of retailers are concerned about that kind of thing, but we have to move beyond that and think about innovative ways to be able to share that information, because there's so much we can learn from not only each other, but sharing that with brands and being able to peer down into a local market and understand where our sales trends, and all fed by inventory, right? So if there are aggregators like a Locally or ourselves that are looking at inventory every single day, we can start surfacing that kind of information up. So this last piece is really kind of a fun piece. This is what I call rising technologies, but it's more about thinking, how is retail gonna look in the future? Now that we've just been through the pandemic and hopefully gonna be out of it in the next year here, what is that lingering habit that consumers are gonna have around shopping remotely? Personally, I don't want to see people sitting on a couch and doing all their shopping from there, because I think there's an experiential type of gratification you get from going to a store, touching and feeling. So I don't think that'll ever go away, but the convenience factor is still there. I may shop online and look at products, but I also at the same time want to go in and touch it, feel it, and buy it, especially in outdoor retail. Those things like skis or boots, things like that, right? So eCommerce, I don't know how many people have heard that term, but that's all about the virtual version of e-commerce, right? Either virtual reality shopping or augmented reality technology. And so in this case, this is a company that is is building technology that allows you to see a product virtually, right? So this is virtual, and be able to peer at it as if you were in the store, right? And click on it and actually buy it online. And so one of the things that we talked about with them was the ability to build out stores. They built out a store for Tommy Hilfiger as an example. And it's, it's a mixture of real store pictures as well as virtual. You can't really tell the difference. But the point is you're walking through that store on your mobile phone as a consumer, being able to look at the products with a convenience. And again, you have that option to go in the store and actually buy it, but you're seeing what's in the store, right? And that's all driven by inventory, because the pictures that are shown of these products on the wall are driven by the inventory behind it, right? So that's the only way it knows to show a pair of shoes or whatever and make sure people come in to buy it. So this is kind of an interesting new technology coming out. And this is more about AR. This is taking a body scan and being able to see products, how they look on me, right? So this is, think about this. This is, again, I need to show customers products that I have in stock and what they might look like on you, so that once I'm done with this, I can click on a button and buy that particular dress right there once I've seen it on myself and like it, right? So that's a great example of where augmented reality is going to, as well as the virtual side itself. And this last highlight is a technology that is interesting also. And these are just about to think about where we're going, but remember, they're fed by inventory, right? So I want to go back to that main point that I've been driving through for this whole entire discussion. So this company allows events and resorts and things like that to be able to allow their the folks that are at that particular location take photos, and then the technology can read some brand affinity stuff like a Burton or whatever it might be on the board, or goggles, and then maybe push digital marketing to those individuals as they're still at the resort, and direct them to either ads or to let them know that there's a local retailer that has that product in stock or has other products like it in stock. So it's just an interesting way at looking how we can use other technologies driven by inventory to then do digital marketing ultimately. Okay, so well, it's perfect. I'm on my 30 minutes, exactly where I wanted to be for you. So I thank you. I just here at Lincoln, I'm not going to do a long commercial, but this is what we think about every single day. All of these things we talked about, and where we're trying to take the industry and take our technology. And we'd love input, we'd love feedback, and we'd love to talk to whoever would like to speak to us about some more of these things. My contact information is right there at the bottom. If you walk away with anything, I want you to walk away with that concept I talked about around aggregation, cloud computing, in thinking of the industry and starting to move towards the sharing of content from a brand to a retailer, and how technologies like these cloud platforms can help in that regard, and maybe lowering some of the guard. It will dramatically lower costs, and it'll make the entire ecosystem a much more efficient and obviously prosperous, I think, environment overall. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and you all have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Always a wealth of knowledge talking with you. If anybody has any questions, as Tim mentioned, please reach out to him, or you can reach out to any of us at SIA as well.